When you look around the NHL today, it almost feels like you're watching a revolving door on fast forward. Players bouncing from team to team, blockbuster trades dropping out of nowhere, free agency turning into a yearly frenzy of jersey swaps and the surprise signings. Blink once, and a fan favorite has packed his bags. Blink twice, and the guy you thought would retire in your team's colors is skating somewhere else entirely. Loyalty, the old school kind, the kind fans used to count on, seems to be fading right before our eyes. But rewind the tape just a few decades, and it was a different world. Back then, staying meant something. Players didn't just wear a crest, they carried it. Every shift, every battle along the boards, every playoff war, they fought for the same sweater, the same city, the same fans who chanted their names year after year. These weren't just athletes. They were pillars, icons, living pieces of a franchise's heartbeat. They didn't just play for a team, they became the team. And that's exactly what we're diving into today. The rarest breed in modern sports, the lifers, the legends, the men who planted their skates on home ice and never looked back. This is the countdown of the top 10 one-team players in NHL history, the ones who turned loyalty into legacy and left fingerprints all over the game we love. Before we dive in, do me one quick favor. If you love classic NHL history and the stories behind the legends, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. It helps the channel reach more fans who appreciate the game the way it used to be played. Coming in at number 10, Patrice Bergeron, the Boston Bruins heartbeat from 2003 to 2023. Patrice Bergeron isn't just another name on a stat sheet. He's the kind of player coaches dream about and opponents dread seeing hop over the boards. For 20 straight seasons, he was the quiet pulse, the steady heartbeat of the Boston Bruins, the kind of presence that didn't need a spotlight to command respect. One of the greatest two-way forwards the game has ever seen, he turned the art of two-way play into something almost scientific. While most players were scrambling to keep up, Bergeron was always one move ahead, reading the ice like a grandmaster, plotting 10 steps into the future. Drafted 45th overall in 2003, there were no flashing lights, no predictions of superstardom, just a teenager with calm eyes and an old soul. But year after year, shift after shift, he built a career that was nothing short of remarkable. Selke trophies piled up like clockwork. Leadership roles grew heavier, yet somehow fit him more naturally. And of course, there were cups. Hard-earned, bruising, unforgettable, but the road wasn't flawless. In those early years, Bergeron suffered a concussion so severe that many feared his career was over before it had even truly begun. Yet, in true Bergeron fashion, he didn't fold. He rebuilt himself, slowly, quietly, determinedly. And when he returned, he wasn't just the same player, he was better. There are moments that live forever in Bruins history. Clutch face-offs in overtime, game-saving backchecks, subtle plays that rarely make highlight reels, but win championships. And then there's his Team Canada legacy. Olympic golds, perfect chemistry with Crosby, quiet dominance on hockey's biggest stage. When he retired, he didn't make it about himself. No spectacle, no drama, just pure class. The perfect Bruin, steady, loyal, and respected everywhere. Coming in at number 9, Alex Delvecchio, the quiet, reliable center who kept the Detroit Red Wings engine running for 24 straight seasons. Alex Delvecchio isn't the kind of player who shouts for attention. He never needed to. His game spoke loudly enough, even if he never did. For nearly a quarter of a century, he was the Red Wings metronome, the steady rhythm beneath the roar of Detroit hockey. While Gordie Howe stole headlines and dazzled crowds, Delvecchio was the glue, the dependable heartbeat that kept the entire operation running smoothly. Delvecchio joined the Detroit Red Wings organization in 1947 and made his NHL debut in 1950. Entering the league at a time when the game was tough, unforgiving, and brutally physical. But he thrived. Season after season, he delivered consistency that bordered on supernatural. Over 1,500 games in the same sweater. No trades, no temptations, no drifting to another market for a new chapter. Detroit was his beginning and his end, and he never once looked over the fence. He wasn't the flashiest player, but he was one of the smartest. He scored, he passed, he defended, he led, and he did it all without ego. 3 Stanley Cups, a Lady Byng trophy, and a reputation as one of the classiest men ever to lace up. But here's what older Red Wing fans remember most. The game's played streak. Night after night, year after year, number 10 was out there. Dependable, durable, unshakable. No theatrics, no drama, just excellence. When he finally hung up the skates, it felt like the end of an era. As if one of the pillars of Hockeytown had quietly stepped off the stage. A quiet superstar who kept the winged wheel turning for 24 unforgettable seasons. Coming in at number 8, Henri Richard, the pocket rocket, with an unmatched 11 Stanley Cups and a lifetime of Montreal loyalty. Henri Richard may have been smaller in stature, but there was absolutely nothing small about the legacy he left behind. Nicknamed the Pocket Rocket, he lived in the shadow of his older brother Maurice, yet somehow carved out a career that stands as one of the greatest in hockey history. For 20 years, he wore the Canadiens' crest with a kind of pride and purpose that never dimmed, not even for a moment. Joined the Canadiens in 1955, Richard stepped into a Montreal dynasty and immediately added fuel to the fire. He wasn't just fast, he was relentless. He buzzed around the ice like a spark you couldn't extinguish, always on the puck, always in the right place, always making something happen. Opponents hated playing against him, and teammates loved having him on their side. And then there's the number that will never be matched, 11 Stanley Cups. No modern player will even sniff that record. It's a relic of a golden age, and Richard was at the center of it. He didn't ride shotgun, he propelled the wagon, but his defining moment, the 1966 Stanley Cup final, overtime, a scramble in front, Richard jams it home. Montreal wins the cup. That goal isn't just history. It's stitched into the fabric of the franchise. Despite all the glory, he remained humble, soft-spoken, and fiercely loyal to Montreal. He didn't chase money or fame. He stayed because he loved the sweater, the city, the fans. A small player with a massive legacy. Unmatched, unrepeatable, unforgettable. Holding down the 7th spot is Ken Daneyko, the iron-tough defender who embodied the New Jersey Devils for 2 uncompromising decades. Ken Daneyko wasn't built for flash, and he didn't pretend to be. He wasn't dangling through defenders or blasting one-timers from the blue line. No, Daneyko played the kind of hockey that leaves bruises, earns respect, and forges legends. For 20 straight seasons, he was the bedrock of the New Jersey Devils. The scarred, fearless warrior who made every inch of ice a battlefield. Drafted in 1982, he entered the NHL when the Devils were still struggling for identity. And piece by piece, Daneyko helped build it. He was there through the rough early years, when wins were rare and expectations were low. He suffered through the losing seasons, the criticism, the growing pains of a young franchise trying to find its place. But he never left, never drifted, never wondered if the grass might be greener somewhere else. And then the tide turned. Scott Stevens arrived. Martin Brodeur emerged. The Devils transformed into a defensive powerhouse. And Daneyko was right in the middle of it. 3 Stanley Cups, a new dynasty, a new standard of hockey excellence built on grit, discipline, and pure defensive suffocation. But what fans remember most isn't his skill, it's his sacrifice. The bloodied faces, the blocked shots, the battles in the trenches that don't show up in highlight reels. The iconic toothless grin symbolizing exactly who he was. A throwback, a warrior, a man who understood the price of loyalty. And then came 2003, his final cup, his final run, his emotional last game. The crowd chanting his name, the team honoring him, the city acknowledging the beating heart behind their defensive identity. He wasn't the star on the poster, but he was the backbone of a franchise. The ultimate Devil, gritty, loyal, and absolutely irreplaceable. In the number 6 position stands Stan Mikita, one of the most brilliant, innovative, and respected players to ever wear the Chicago Blackhawks crest. Stan Mikita wasn't just a great player, he was a trailblazer, a thinker, a master of reinvention. And for 22 seasons, he was the face, the force, and the fire of the Chicago Blackhawks. While other players relied on raw talent or brute strength, Mikita combined both with something far rarer, intellect. He saw the ice differently, he played the game differently, and he stayed loyal to Chicago from the moment he arrived until the moment he retired. When Mikita first broke into the league, he was fiery, penalty-prone, and constantly in the referee's ear. But what makes his story legendary isn't just the trophies, it's the transformation. Almost overnight, he retooled his game, cleaned it up, became a gentleman on the ice, and the result? He didn't get worse, he became unstoppable. Art Ross trophies, Hart trophies, Lady Bings. He didn't just win them, he collected them in pairs. Then there's his innovation, the curved stick blade. That wasn't an accident. That was Mikita experimenting, tinkering, and ultimately reshaping the sport itself. Shots changed, passing changed, goaltending changed. The entire geometry of the NHL shifted because one creative mind in Chicago wasn't afraid to break tradition. But the heart of Mikita's story is loyalty. Every milestone, every record, every achievement came while wearing the same sweater, the iconic Blackhawks crest pressed over his heart. Through rebuilding years, near misses, big wins, and personal challenges, he never stepped away, never looked around, never considered any place else home. And fans loved him for it. Generations grew up watching number 21 glide across Chicago ice with that effortless posture, that unmistakable poise, that quiet authority. He wasn't just a Blackhawk, he defined what it meant to be one. A genius on the ice, a gentleman in the game, and a Chicago legend forever. Claiming the number 5 spot is Gilbert Perreault, the electrifying original Sabre, who whose loyalty shaped Buffalo's identity from the very first puck drop. Gilbert Perreault didn't just join the Buffalo Sabres, he launched them. As the franchise's first ever draft pick in 1970, he carried the full weight of a brand new team on his young shoulders. But instead of cracking under that pressure, he turned it into magic. For 17 straight seasons, Perreault dazzled fans with a style of play that felt more like art than sport. Effortless glide, impossible hands, and a sense of timing that could freeze an entire arena in anticipation. His skating wasn't just smooth, it was hypnotic. He'd glide through defenders as if the ice tilted in his favor. His stick handling didn't just control the puck, it danced with it. And when he teamed up with Rick Martin and René Robert to form the legendary French Connection line, Buffalo suddenly had something it never had before. A superstar trio that could go head-to-head with anyone in the league. But here's what makes Perreault's story hit deeper. He didn't have to stay. As expansions came, contracts shifted, and players throughout the league explored new markets, Perreault never wavered. He stayed in Buffalo, the smaller market, the underdog city, the place that needed him the most. Loyalty wasn't a slogan for him, it was his instinct. Fans remember the highlight reel rushes, the end-to-end masterpieces where he sliced through entire defenses like they weren't even there. They remember the playoff battles, the packed odd roaring with every touch of his stick, and they remember how he carried himself, graceful, proud, and deeply connected to the community that embraced him. When he retired, it wasn't just the end of a career, it felt like Buffalo was saying goodbye to its hockey soul, the original Sabre, elegant, loyal, and forever the heartbeat of Buffalo hockey. Securing the number 4 position is Sidney Crosby, the modern pillar of loyalty, leadership, and championship pedigree in Pittsburgh. Sidney Crosby didn't just enter the NHL. He arrived with the weight of a city, a franchise, and an entire generation of hockey fans resting on his shoulders. Drafted first overall in 2005, he wasn't just expected to be good, he was expected to save the Pittsburgh Penguins, and somehow, unbelievably, he delivered, and then some. From the moment he stepped onto NHL ice, Crosby played the game with a blend of precision, hunger, and vision that felt almost unfair. He wasn't just reacting to plays, he was designing them, bending the flow of the game to his will. But what makes him a one-team legend isn't just his talent, it's the way he chose to anchor himself to Pittsburgh through highs, lows, injuries, rebuilds, championships, never once looking for an easier path. The cups, they came, 3 of them, each one earned through brutal playoff battles, each one marked by Crosby's fingerprints in the biggest moments. The MVPs, the scoring titles, the accolades, all deserved, but they tell only part of the story, because the truth is, Crosby's career was nearly derailed. Severe concussions, career-threatening symptoms, months and months where nobody knew if he'd ever return, or if he even should. But he fought through it quietly, methodically, with the same determination that defines his play. And when he came back, he didn't just survive, he reclaimed the throne. Fans remember the golden goal in 2010, the shot that lifted an entire country. They remember his leadership, the quiet intensity, the way he never makes it about himself. Pittsburgh embraced him as their captain, their cornerstone, their identity, and he embraced them back. A generational superstar who never needed another jersey because he already found home. Taking the number 3 position is Jean Béliveau, the elegant captain whose presence defined the Montreal Canadiens for an entire generation. Jean Béliveau wasn't simply a hockey player, he was an institution, a symbol, a figure who carried himself with such grace, dignity, and quiet authority that even opponents found themselves admiring him. From 1950 to 1971, he didn't just represent the Montreal Canadiens, he embodied everything the franchise stood for: excellence, pride, and unmatched tradition. When Béliveau first arrived, Montreal fans knew immediately they were witnessing something special. He skated with a kind of effortless command, as if the ice bent slightly under his stride. His hands were soft, his shot was lethal, and his vision belonged to someone who could see the game unfolding 2 seconds into the future. But beyond the skill, there was something else. Something bigger. A presence. A calm, towering confidence that made the Canadiens feel unstoppable whenever he touched the puck. He won Stanley Cups, 10 as a player, tying him eternally to the golden era of Montreal hockey. But championships were only part of the story. Béliveau was the kind of leader players leaned on, not because he demanded respect, but because he earned it with every shift. He didn't shout. He didn't boast. He led with poise, humility, and an unshakable sense of purpose. Fans remember the goals, the celebrations, the clutch performances. But they also remember the man off the ice. The autograph sessions that lasted hours longer than planned. The way he greeted strangers like old friends. The deep connection he felt to Quebec and its people. He was more than a captain, more than a champion. He was the soul of Montreal hockey. A gentleman, a legend, and the living heartbeat of the Canadiens' greatest era. Now, before we break into the elite of the elite, we have to acknowledge a few icons whose loyalty left a mark on the game forever. Mario Lemieux, the generational superstar who carried the Pittsburgh Penguins on his back for decades, staying loyal through battles, comebacks, and miracles. Henrik Sedin, the Vancouver Canucks soft-spoken captain whose loyalty, leadership, and playmaking defined an entire era of West Coast hockey. Joe Sakic, the quiet superstar who stayed faithful to the Nordiques Avalanche franchise from day one, becoming the face of loyalty and class in Colorado. Earning the number 2 position is Nicklas Lidström, the flawless, almost mechanical defender who anchored the Detroit Red Wings for 20 immaculate seasons. Nicklas Lidström wasn't just great, he was inevitable, predictable in the most terrifying way possible. Because every night, without fail, he delivered perfection. No panic, no chaos, no wasted movement. For 2 full decades, he patrolled the Red Wings' blue line with a kind of cold, calculated precision that made opponents feel like they were trapped inside his personal chessboard. Drafted in 1989 and arriving in 1991, Lidström wasn't loud, flashy, or dramatic. He didn't crush opponents with thunderous hits or unleash reckless slapshots. Instead, he did something far more difficult. He made the hardest position in hockey look effortless. His stick was always in the right place. His angles were flawless. His reads were instant. And his mistakes? Practically non-existent. 7 Norris trophies, 4 Stanley Cups. Countless nights where fans left the arena realizing they had just watched something close to defensive perfection. Lidström didn't just play the game, he optimized it. And then came the leadership. When Steve Yzerman retired, Detroit needed a new captain. Someone who could carry the weight of expectation that comes with a winged wheel. Lidström stepped into that role with the same quiet confidence that defined his play. No theatrics, no speeches, just results. Constant, undeniable results. What Red Wings fans remember most isn't one moment. It's the accumulation of countless little moments. The perfectly timed poke checks, the effortless exits from the defensive zone, the calm under pressure when the game was seconds from slipping away. Lidström wasn't a highlight reel player. He was the reason highlight reels were necessary for everyone else. He never chased glory, never chased money, never chased a new market or a new challenge. Detroit was his home, his beginning, his middle, and his end. A machine in human form, a captain without ego, a legend who redefined what a defenseman could be. Claiming the top spot on our list is Steve Yzerman, the iconic captain whose loyalty, grit, and heart shaped the Detroit Red Wings for over 2 unforgettable decades. Steve Yzerman wasn't just the face of the Detroit Red Wings, he was their spine, their heartbeat, their identity. When he arrived in 1983 as a shy 18-year-old with a lightning shot and hungry eyes, nobody could have predicted what he would become. Not just a star, not just a leader, but the very definition of what a captain should be. For 22 seasons, Yzerman carried Detroit through eras of struggle, dominance, heartbreak, and finally, triumph. All while wearing the same sweater, the same crest, the same unwavering sense of responsibility. At just 21 years old, he was handed the captain's C, and he didn't treat it like a letter. He treated it like a calling. Yzerman evolved his game again and again, shifting from pure scorer to complete sacrifice-first leader as the team around him changed. That transformation didn't just make him better, it made Detroit unstoppable. 3 Stanley Cups, countless playoff battles, legendary performances played on one good leg, sometimes half a leg, sometimes just raw grit holding everything together. The 2002 playoff run, where he played with a knee so damaged most players wouldn't even lace up, that wasn't just bravery, that was devotion, the kind that fans never forget. And through it all, he refused to leave. Even when the Red Wings struggled, even when other stars jumped ship, even when his body could have used a quieter city or an easier role. Detroit was his home, his people, his fight. When he finally lifted the Stanley Cup as captain, you could feel decades of sweat, sacrifice, and stubborn loyalty pouring into that moment. And when he retired, it didn't feel like a chapter ending. It felt like a legend stepping into eternity. The ultimate one-team player, the ultimate captain, a Red Wing forever. If you enjoyed this deep dive into NHL loyalty, go ahead and give the video a like. It lets me know you want more stories just like this. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel for more legendary hockey breakdowns every single week. Thanks for watching.